workplace first aider, someone who has attended a first aid course, or someone who would provide immediate help in an emergency. Have you ever had to use first aid in a situation where you felt out of your depth? This presentation will explore the support needs of first aiders after traumatic events. There's increasing recognition that co-survivors, including anyone who has provided first aid, witnessed a traumatic event, or those closely connected to a casualty, may also have support needs following a traumatic event. In this presentation, I'll briefly explore how the Trauma-Informed Wales framework can be applied in the context of first aid and first aid training, highlighting the need for further research into interventions to support the well-being of first aiders. In this presentation, I define a first aider as a member of the public who provides immediate assistance and initiates a medical response to an emergency. This can include anyone who's gone to first aid training, but also lay responders who may have not ever been to a first aid course. It could also be a healthcare professional in an out-of-hospital context. I used to work as a first aid trainer for the British Red Cross, and I often found that learners were carrying unprocessed trauma. Given the opportunity, they would share their story, often for the first time, as they didn't want to bring it home and upset their family, or did request support, but at the end of a very long wait list for NHS mental health services. First aiders can be especially impacted by incidents involving family members or where there's a fatality or unknown outcome. Unfortunately, I myself experienced traumatic stress after providing first aid assistance at a serious road crash. I found that working in a first aid environment, first aid training environment, it was triggering. It brought up unsettling emotions, and this impacted my ability to effectively do training. A 2003 study found that the majority of first aiders who had provided support to unresponsive casualties experienced post-traumatic symptoms, with some even meeting the 4 criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. The aim of the Trauma-Informed Wales framework, on which this project is based, aims to develop a Wales that recognises and responds to trauma and its effects in a positive way to improve the health and well-being of those affected. At the core of the framework is specialist approaches, but there's also recognition that these need to be wrapped around by universal trauma-informed awareness and approaches. Specialist interventions may be formal, personalised and co-produced interventions. They're offered within a range of settings or specialist inputs to support organisations and systems to be trauma-informed. A trauma-enhanced approach is used by frontline workers who are providing direct or intensive support to people who are known to have experienced traumatic events within their role and encompasses ways of working to help people to cope with the impact of their trauma. A trauma-skilled approach is embedded within the practice of everyone who provides care or support to people who may have experienced trauma, whether or not the trauma is known about. This applies to most organisations and services in Wales, and many working in and with the community. Trauma-aware is a universal approach that emphasises the role that we all have as members of Welsh society, personally and professionally, to seek, raise an awareness and understanding of trauma. It challenges perceptions that maintain oppression and inequality, and highlights that people in all communities have a role to play in preventing adverse childhood experiences, adversity and traumatic events. It provides community-led responses to the impact of adverse childhood experience and trauma, supporting resilience through connection, inclusion and compassion. Together, these 4 practice levels provide an integrated trauma-informed practice framework that provides a coherent and joined-up way of working with organisations, systems and the community. To support first aiders to overcome traumatic stress and to retain first aid skills at a number of different levels. The first level that we're going to explore is a specialist intervention. Lots of first aiders following a traumatic event will have lots of questions, They will have lots of concerns, perhaps about their first aid techniques, whether they did everything right. They may also have needs to be signposted to wellbeing resources to deal with any unprocessed emotions from the intervention. I aim to develop a co-developed approach to intervening with first aiders, helping to answer questions, signpost to resources, and generally improve the post-traumatic well-being of first aiders. I also would like to look at trauma-enhanced retraining. So some groups in society are going to be less willing to attend a public or workplace first aid course if they've had real life experience with some of the topics covered. So, for example, it could be serious injuries or CPR. Covering these topics on a course might be incredibly triggering for some people. So a trauma-enhanced approach to retraining would look at building up skills and building up confidence for specific groups who have sort of a reason where they're hesitant about attending a general first aid training course. And finally, at a sort of trauma-aware level, there's a lot of issues that could be triggering for first aiders in a first aid course. So examples, there is issues perhaps around the understanding of implied consent for unresponsive females and joking about kissing Annie in courses. There may also be sort of issues where younger children are being taught first aid, perhaps without the emotional or physical abilities to be able to deal with a real life cardiac arrest. So I hope to explore general questions in first aid training, as well as more sort of specific interventions for people who have experienced a traumatic event and would like additional support following that event, and eventually looking towards retraining in first aid skills. At the bottom of the screen, there's a QR code which will take you through to a link tree of resources. So this would include post-traumatic wellbeing resources for first aiders and links to the website, email, etc. If you'd like to get in touch, the email address is traumainformedfirstaid@gmail.com, and there's also a link for the link tree on the QR code at the bottom of the page. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the best. Bye.